Quote, "The only thing I know is that I know nothing. And I'm not sure I know that." End quote. Socrates. Look around the world today, and I bet you'll see a certain kind of spiritual sickness. It corrodes mental health, physical health, and the focus of this article, love. What we see now, though, many of our wisest spiritual leaders have seen before. Whether it's Buddha, Socrates, Jesus, and Muhammad, they're all known around the world to be some of the wisest spiritual minds the world has ever grown, ever seen. Now, you might debate on each one, but these are ubiquitously around. Just like background noises are ubiquitously everywhere, so too were these spiritual teachings from these people. But I want you to stop for a second and think before we go on. None of those people wrote things down. None of them wrote books. None of them sold courses or offered retreats. By all accounts, they saw a world of humans suffering and they wanted to help. And then they began the honest pursuit of that aim, or an effort towards that end. If we look at the answers, the commandments, and the doctrines that are derived from each of their teachings, they were created by others, written down after their death. Now, maybe they were created for power. Maybe they were created because, followers wanted to help. Plato wanted to help. David wanted to help, whatever, right? But the motives that they were created on were not their own. Now, I'm not going to take you down a deep theological rabbit hole here, so I just want to explore a logical spirituality with you. Now, before we start, it's important to remember that these are just beliefs. The beliefs you have, I have, we got about 10 minutes. We can set them down. Because I promise you, they're always going to be there for you, ready to pick back up. They don't go anywhere. So what I'm inviting you to think about for a moment is something I call Socratic spirituality. And I think I've discovered it, and again, kind of seeing the commonalities between some of these wisest minds and maybe not the doctrines. It's been the best I've found to live, to whether it's love and life. A certain curiosity, a Socratic spirituality. Now, Socratic spirituality isn't about knowing anything. It's actually about knowing you know nothing and then letting the curiosity nourish your soul. Now, let's get deeper on a few ways it's going to serve your love life. And more importantly, how you can practice it, how you can nourish it, how you can grow it. Now, what we're going to talk about in this episode is kind of three cores of that. I think one is know thyself, right? Know thyself, because there's a lot to that. You can't learn what you think you already know. We forget that in our culture, that ancient proverb, know thyself. Number two is curiosity and courtship. Curiosity and courtship. I think, it kills the cat, but it saves your heart. You probably you likely been more curious with what toaster oven you bought, with what, mascara you buy, with what foundation, with what underwear you pick, than you are with who you're giving your heart to. And if we're not curious, again, it might have killed the cat, but it'll save your heart. So curiosity and courtship in advance, right? Because once you buy the house, buy the car, there you are. And number three is, paradoxically, to know your love kills your love. Right? If we want to have relationships that last, sometimes to know who they are, to lock them into something, to not give them space, that can hurt them. Know thyself. This is one of 3 ancient Greek maxims inscribed at the Temple of Apollo in Delphi. The other 2 are nothing in excess and certainty brings insanity. Socrates himself would have known of these 2, but I want to stay focused for today's episode on how it affects you. You see, as Alan Watts once said, to travel is to be alive, but to get somewhere is to be dead. Now, what this means is your life is a constant changing journey, and knowing thyself is not about getting to some final understanding, because that's just to be dead. Knowing thyself is a verb, a constant process of being mindful of that indescribable thing we call you. Whether it's staying curious about who you are, what you want, what you like, what you need, what you prefer, what you even want to do, all of those things, it's all served by being curious. You see, being curious isn't to know. It's actually the opposite. Being curious allows you to stay mindful of the changes that are constantly happening in your environment. I mean, if you want to find someone to love, you first need to be able to be honest about who you are and what you want. You see, knowing thyself doesn't mean certainty for who you are. It means being curious, mindful for what is. Hence the 3rd maxim. Because if you don't want to be curious, your certainty will bring you to insanity. Which is why it brings us to our 2nd point. Curiosity in courtship. You see, I have a question for you. Would you like to know that someone has an addiction before you attach yourself to them? Would you like to know if they're a cheater before you give them your heart? I mean, would you like to know if they're a nice person or just acting nice? How about knowing if they want to just use you for sex or for money before you give it to them? Would you be curious to know that? Well, you see, these are examples of how curiosity in courtship can save your heart. You see, this is where curiosity comes in and protects you from heartbreak. It's not that a person is addicted or has a wife or isn't nice themselves or wants to use you for whatever reason. It isn't any of those things that breaks your heart. You see, what breaks your heart is you thought you knew they were not like that. You thought you knew he was a good guy. You thought you knew she wasn't going to do that to you. You thought you knew she wasn't popping perkies. You thought you can think these things. But when we practice Socratic spirituality, our curiosity opens up. It opens us up. When we practice Socratic spirituality, our curiosity opens us to become more receptive to what is. Because relationships often end from the red flags we ignored in the beginning. Instead of stifling our curiosity with knowing, usually false knowledge, by the way, we instead feed our curiosity by asking questions and collecting data before giving our heart to someone, before we do that thing. You see, everyone is fucked up in some way. I'm not going to lie to you. But if you want to have a lasting love, you need to get curious as to how this person is fucked up. Because that's what's going to help you be able to see honestly if that kind of fuck up is compatible with your kinds of fucked up. Or you can just keep thinking that you know things and be used up until there's no life left in you. Speaking of death, that brings us to our third point. To know your love kills your love. You see, I want you to imagine you finally found someone that you're compatible with. That's where you can trust them and you can lust them. Where you're not the same exactly, but you're compatible on, like, the spiritual stuff, the sexual stuff, the intellectual stuff. You just got it all together. It's perfect. But what's crazy is that you can kill the relationship if you know them, right? I mean, think about it for a minute. If you know what kind of sex your partner likes, how curious are you going to get to see if she wants something new? I mean, if you know your partner's goals and dreams, how likely are you going to ask him what he wants to do, what he cares about? I mean, think about it. You know what they like and what they don't like. You figured it all out. Why get curious? Because, well, what is your prize for figuring all this out? Well, it's that your relationship journey is dead. Your relationship itself, done. Because your knowledge killed it. You see, as we've already talked about, change is the only constant in this universe. And if you find someone that you want to love for years and even decades, then curiosity is the soil it needs to grow. We can't control others, right? But if we maintain our curiosity in our partner, this enables us to grow attraction towards them. This is why couples often fall apart, because they stop getting curious like they were in the beginning, because they think they know everything already. They stop asking you, how was your day? What do you like to eat? Is there anything you'd like to do? But little do they know that by doing this, they are extinguishing their own desire. I mean, as Richard Feynman says, if you go deep into something, it becomes interesting. Gravity might not be interesting to you, but there's some people that it's fascinating to. And if you go deep in it with curiosity, that happens. And we have that relationship, that responsibility, if we want to have lasting love with someone. Now, how do you practice this? Well, we can practice this genuine curiosity by asking questions, even if you think you already know the answer, right? Because this allows you to make space for your partner to grow, right? And because the way relationships work, if we're not growing together, then we're actually growing apart. I mean, because remember, change happens automatically. Growing love is a curious choice. Now, to have the love that lasts takes a spiritual practice that does not know. For the sake of your love and your life, I hope you don't know either.